The last video I'm going to show you for modifying objects is the array command. Now in previous videos I have shown you how to create patterns of shapes using the copy and the offset commands. Well, the array command is going to take pattern making to a whole new level. So first I'm going to show you two types of arrays, and then I'm going to show you how to apply them in an interior design type application. So I've got my blank drawing. I've already typed units and got them set to architectural. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a line. Something kind of like that, and there we go. Up here in the ribbon is the array command, and there's actually three types of arrays. The default one that it usually goes to is the rectangular array. And what it does is it's going to take this line and it's going to make it into a grid pattern, as you can see what AutoCAD is demonstrating for us right now. So let's go ahead and try this. There's no better way to understand a command than just get right into it. So I click the rectangular array command, click on the line to select the object. I'm done selecting object, so I'm going to hit enter on the keyboard. And what it did is two things. You'll see that it looks like my line got a little thicker, but when I zoom in a little bit, you'll see that there's actually three lines there, and my ribbon changed. So to explain this a little bit easier, the array command is what I call one of the special commands. There's a couple commands that are like this that you're going to learn in Unit 2. When I say that it's special, it means that there are a lot of options that this command has for you to use to modify the object. So instead of trying to fit this all in the command bar like we've seen in previous commands, AutoCAD says, hey, there's a lot of options for this command. I'm going to create a special tab for you in the ribbon so that you can control this command a little bit easier. So as you can see in the ribbon, we have the array creation tab that was created for us. And here are all the options that we have for modifying this array. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can kind of see what happened. We've got 4 columns, and in each column is 3 rows, right? That's exactly what our ribbon is telling us. We have 4 columns and 3 rows. If I change this to 3 columns and hit enter, you'll notice that it went from 4 to 3 columns. It's the same thing with the rows. If I change this from 3 to 10 and hit enter, it sometimes takes it a minute to think, but you'll notice that it did give me 10 lines in each row. Now those are pretty small and difficult to see when I'm zoomed out, so let's spread these out a little bit. There's 2 ways I can do that. In the rows panel, there is a option called between. Right now they're set to 1 inches in between each of those lines. Let's make that 6 inches and see what happens. Sometimes you have to move your cursor in order for it to get going, so don't panic if nothing changes right away. Just move your cursor into model space and you should be good. But you'll see that it did spread those 10 lines in each of those columns out so that I can see them a little bit better. The same thing can happen with the between option in the columns panel. These are spread out pretty well. It's at 21 feet is what they are from here to here. Let's get them a little bit closer. Let's try, what does 18 feet look like? Move my cursor and you'll see that the columns moved in closer to each other. You'll also notice that there's a levels panel up in the ribbon. Now that's for 3D drawing in AutoCAD, and we aren't covering any kind of three-dimensional drawing information in this video series, so you can ignore that for right now. You can also ignore the associative button that's highlighted in blue, but I do want you to watch the base point. If I come down here, you'll notice that there's a little blue box located right here. That's the base point. It's the point at which I can use to move this command. Now you'll notice that it temporarily is showing me where my original line was drawn, just so that I can understand where I'm placing this new array. But if I want to change where that base point is located, I can click on this and I can come over here and choose this area for where my base point is. I could also choose the top of the middle one if I wanted to. I could put it wherever I wanted to. It doesn't even have to be on a line. It could be down here. I always kind of like it right on the corner of the object. It helps me move it a little bit easier. Now once I have the array pretty much drawn in the way that I want it to and it's placed where I want it to, I have to click on this close array because we're in a special drawing mode, which means we're in model space, but we're not in model space, kind of like another dimension of model space. So in order to get back and start drawing the rest of the stuff that I wanted to draw in model space, I have to click Close Array. And now I'm back in model space and life is good. Now if I need to change this array for whatever reason, I just click right back on it and it goes right back into the drawing array mode. But here's an interesting thing about array. It's one entity. It's kind of like the Three Musketeers. It's all for one and one for all. Or is it one for all and all for one? I don't remember which way it goes, but the array acts as a single entity, so it moves all together in one motion. They are not individual lines, it's all one thing. Now if I wanted to make this individual lines, I have to type a word. It's explode. Now do you remember that guy on the Muppets who would run around blowing up dynamite on everybody? That guy was crazy. But it's essentially the same thing. That's totally what I think of anytime that I explode something. But once I type explode and hit enter, it doesn't look like anything happened, but these lines are all now individual lines again. So that's a quick and easy trick if you don't want the array to be all for one, one for all, whatever that line is. You can hit type explode and it will give you individual lines. Now there is no command that I can use to go back into making these all for one, one for all. It's the only way that I could possibly do that is to use the undo button and get it back into the array, but that's the only way to get it back. Now this doesn't have to be just a single object. We can use multiple objects and create some interesting patterns with it. Let's see here. I'm just drawing some random stuff. You ever see those crazy Las Vegas carpets and ever wonder how they make that work? This is going to be, I guess, my crazy carpet pattern. So I'm going to highlight all of the objects. I'm going to go to rectangular array and click it, and it automatically populates with the 4 columns and the 3 rows. This time I'm going to show you a couple of other options. You're going to see some blue arrows here, 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 and here. The outermost arrows are going to control how many columns or rows that you have in your array. So I can subtract or add as I want to. I'm going to keep it there. You have to click. Make sure you click. And then I can grab this one and say, well, maybe I want to have 1 row or 2 rows or 3 or 4 if I could get it to go up. There we go. I'm going to stick with 3, I think. There we go. So that's the outermost arrows. The innermost arrows help me control how far apart the rows and columns are from each other. So if we're doing a crazy Las Vegas carpet pattern, they're pretty close to each other, right? So I'm going to zoom in, going to bring this closer together. Oh yeah, I see this carpet pattern going right to the Bellagio. So you can modify arrays either in the ribbon or you can control them by using the arrows. It depends on how precise that you need everything to be. And again, if I want these all to be individual, I highlight the pattern, I type explode, and they are all now individual lines throughout. So maybe every other circle I don't want in my pattern, I can now change that. And there's an updated carpet pattern for you. So this is the rectangular array. What I'd love for you to do is pause the video and really play with it. Play with lines, play with shapes, play with the ribbon, play with the base point, play with the arrows. There's a lot to kind of figure out when it comes to learning how the rectangular array command behaves. I'm going to go ahead and erase these and I'm going to talk about the polar array. Polar array is located in the arrow right next to the array, and it is the one that looks like a circle. And that's essentially what it is. I'm actually escaping that and going to draw a line first. That would help. I'm going to select the line and then choose the array command. What's different about this is that AutoCAD wants me to specify a center point of the array. So just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to put it on the end of the line, and you'll see that it kind of made like spokes on a bicycle wheel, right? So it's arraying it around a specific point. It's always going to be kind of circular in nature. The ribbon changed a little bit as well. We don't have a columns panel anymore. We have items. So right now it says 6. What happens if I do 15? Hit enter and I have to move my cursor a little bit to get it to work. And we now have 15 of those lines going around that circle. The between and the fill, they are kind of connected to each other. So let me show you. Right now we're at 360 degrees, right? That's how many degrees a circle is. What happens when we change it to 180? The drawing changed. We now have a 180 degree half circle. And we also see that it went from 180 and it now is 13. So there's now 13 degrees between each of these spokes. Let's go to 90 and see what that happens. So I still have 15 spokes. Now there's 6 degrees in between each one of these. So these two are related to each other. There's a mathematical calculation that's already done for you. You just have to tell it, well, how many spokes do I want and what degree do I want it to go around in a circle for? Rows is a little interesting. Let me put this back at 180 so that you can see what I'm talking about. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just show you how it works. So I'm going to put this to 2 and I'm going to put the between to about 50 feet. Wow. So what rows does is it essentially creates a copy and then it moves that copy from the base point here, the center of our polar array, and moves it just straight out from each other. So I'll show you at 40 feet. I'll show you at 30 feet. It gets closer and closer until there becomes a point where it's really hard to decipher between them because they are overlapping each other. Do you see how that is overlapping? So you kind of have to be a little bit careful when it comes to rows if you're wanting to use a row. But you can do some kind of fun shapes and stuff. I can imagine that you could use array for all kinds of things from floor patterns to furniture design. There's a lot you can do with this type of polar array. I'm going to just go ahead and put it back at 1 row just for purposes. When I'm done with this array, I hit close array to get out of that drawing mode. If I want these to be individual lines, I just type explode and they are now individual lines. Now let me show you some other kind of fun stuff that you can do with polar array a little bit. I'm going to draw this line again. This time I'm going to choose my base point to be away from the end of the line. And here let's do 15 so that you can see that. And let's do 180 so that you can compare it to the first one that we did. So by just choosing my base point to be slightly away from the object, it gives me a gap right here. It almost looks like sun coming up out of the horizon. Let me show you another one. It's kind of fun, like I'm saying, it's really fun to get into this. I'm going to grab the line, I'm going to do polar array. This time I'm going to pick the center point right on the object itself and do 15. So I can actually have the base point on the object itself and it works this way. When I try to change the fill to 180, I'm not really sure what the mathematical calculation is because it doesn't really appear to have changed a whole lot. So you kind of have to be careful a little bit with this one. I'm going to put it back to 360 so that we have that. Now here's where the fun stuff starts coming. I'm going to draw another line. What happens when I choose polar array, select the object, enter, when I select that center point to be kind of away but not in line with it? I'm just going to kind of, maybe I'll put it back right here. Click right there and whoa, look at that. So it takes this object and it polar arrays it around the center point. It's all proportional. It's really weird how it works. But you can create some really cool stuff with this. What if we did an arc? Hey. And we did polar array. And I'm going to put the arc right here. There we go. Now we're getting like into space stuff. So there's a lot of different things to play with in terms of the polar array. So go ahead and pause the video, play with shapes, play with the base point when you first do it, how many items are in it, all the things. I really want you to get to know how polar array works. Now just to move on, I want to show you how you can put all of this into an interior design type application. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit, and a lot of times when we're working in interior design, we work with ceilings, and every once in a while we have to draw a ceiling fan. So I'm going to show you a way that I draw ceiling fans. I'm going to start with the center of the ceiling fan, which when I'm looking up at it is the lamp, right? So I'm going to start a circle, and I'm actually going to do a radius of 6 inches, which is kind of small, so I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. There we go. Now it's a little bit bigger. Now, everybody thinks when they first do a ceiling fan that all they have to do is just maybe draw a line. Let's see, let's make a blade about 2 feet long, and we'll come up here about 6 inches, and then we'll come back down kind of towards the center. I'm going to type trim, use this as my cutting edge, enter, cut that part off, and there's my blade, right? Well, if I polar array this and I use the center of my lamp, yeah, it could work, I guess, and usually there's about 5 blades on a ceiling fan like this. It could work, but you know, this angle is kind of funky, and doesn't that look a little funky? Blades don't have like a perfectly straight and an angled one. Does that make sense? So I'm going to erase that array. I'm going to close it and then highlight it and erase it. And I'm going to show you how to do it the right way. So I am going to start my blade here. This is the center of the blade. This is not the edge of the blade. And it's a temporary line that I'm drawing just to help guide me on my way. I'm just going to randomly select an angle to go at, but I'll come out about 6 inches from about right there. And then I'm going to pull back. I'm not going to go straight to the center. I'm going to actually come back a little bit, and I have to overlap this circle because otherwise it's going to snap me right to the center of the circle. But if I overlap it and I get that green circle to go away, I want it to be somewhere around here. I want a little thickness down here at the bottom. I'm going to type trim, select my circle as the cutting edge, enter, select this to get rid of it, and hit escape. So this is 1/2 of my ceiling blade fan. There is also usually some kind of fixture that the blade fits into in order to be secured to the ceiling fan. So I'm going to draw another line. I'm going to come out, let's do about 4 inches maybe. And this time I'm going to just go up, let's go 1.5 inches. There we go. Now I want this next line to be parallel with this line, so what's a good command that I could use to make that parallel? If you guessed offset, you are correct. So I'm going to hit the offset key, and I don't exactly know what the distance is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line from here to the edge of this in a straight line. That set my distance. I'm going to go ahead and select this and offset it, and you'll see that it perfectly put it right there on the edge of that line. I'm going to hit escape, trim, all, one more time for enter, and click that off. And then I'm going to come over here and grab this little guy too that overlap on my lamp, and then I'm going to hit escape. So I have pretty angled here. I might want it to be a little bit more round than that. So what is the command that I would use to round a corner? If you guessed fillet, you are correct. I'm going to hit the fillet key. I have to type R for radius because it automatically goes to 0, and I don't want 0. Let's do 1 inch. What the heck? Let's see what happens there. Select the first object. Select the second object. Oh, that's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted it to do. Just a little bit of a rounded edge. So now that I have this half of the blade done, what do I do to get this half over here on this side? If you guessed the mirror command, you are correct. Look at all this being put together. Wow, we're applying stuff, man. Mirror. I'm going to select the first point of my mirror here, and the second point I'm just dragging to the left. I can put it wherever. I can even just go right here if I wanted to. Click. Do I want to erase the source object? No. So I hit enter. And there is my ceiling fan blade. It's pretty thick, but it's just for demonstration purposes. I don't need this line anymore, so I'm going to delete it. I don't like this point on my ceiling fan either, so again I'm going to fillet. Type radius this time, I'm going to do 2 inches instead of 1. Curve that off a little bit there, and now my ceiling fan looks pretty good. Now what I want to do is I want to array this blade 5 times around this circle. So I'm going to grab that, click the polar array button, specify the center point of the array. I want it centered according to the center of my lamp. Click. I'm going to come up here to items and do 5, enter, and there it updated, and I now have a ceiling fan. Perfectly arrayed, the blades are straight on no matter which way that they go, and it's looking pretty good. And you can make it as detailed as you want to. Maybe you want to offset the lamp a little bit to give it some dimension, something like that. But for the most part, this is how you can use polar array in an interior design type way. So in this video, you learned how to use the rectangular array, the polar array, and you also learned how to apply it to something that actually relates to interior design.